In the courtyard of a tech empire, a poor, barefoot girl knelt beside a deaf child, her hands trembling as she reached into his ear. A moment later, the boy gasped and heard his own voice for the first time in years. But when his father rushed him to the hospital, a shocking truth unfolded. Doctors had been bribed to keep him silent. Now, the wealthy man must confront the very people who traded his son's voice for profit. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments where you're tuning in from. Also, don't forget to strike that like and subscribe button. Let's dive in. The courtyard of the Callaway Enterprises gleamed with arrogance. Glossy marble floors, towering glass sculptures, and an extravagant fountain that reached the sky. Employees hustled by, whispering about the man who owned it all, Victor Callaway, the tech mogul. Victor strode quickly, phone pressed to his ear, his other hand gripping the shoulder of his son, Elliot. Elliot, only 10, had been deaf since he was 2. Despite countless specialists, expensive therapies, and years of treatments, his world remained eerily quiet. "Sit here," Victor muttered, pointing to a bench near the fountain. His words were rushed, and he didn't even bother signing. Elliot simply nodded, lowering himself into place, his hands clasped quietly as his father rushed off, already angry on the phone. That's when she appeared, Sophie. Thin, barefoot, her clothes hanging off her frame, carrying a tray of handmade jewelry and faded flowers, trying to sell them on the street. Usually the guards chased her away, but today she slipped past unnoticed. She paused when she saw Elliot. Their eyes met, and he watched her as if seeing something unfamiliar, yet strangely magnetic. Slowly she raised her hand, fingers moving awkwardly. "Hello." His eyes widened. Few strangers ever attempted to sign with him. "You know this?" he signed quickly, still skeptical. "Not much," she signed back, stumbling over some shapes. "But enough. My brother couldn't speak." What happens when the silent truth is revealed? Stay tuned as everything changes. Something shifted in Elliot's heart. For the first time, he felt he wasn't trapped in the silence alone. He signed back to her, "I'm Elliot." "Sophie," she smiled, sitting beside him, ignoring the curious glances from passing workers. "Why are you by yourself?" He shrugged. "Always am." Suddenly, Elliot winced, rubbing his ear. Sophie noticed. "Does it hurt?" Elliot shook his head but signed, "Itches inside. Always has. Doctors never fix it." Her brows furrowed. She leaned in closer, squinting as if searching for something hidden. "Hold still." Elliot tensed. "What are you doing?" "Just trust me." Her voice was quiet but insistent. "There's something in there." Elliot froze. Suspicion clouded his eyes. Everyone said it was just nerves. Every doctor he'd seen had insisted nothing was wrong. His father had dismissed it, saying it was something that couldn't be fixed. But Sophie's eyes didn't hold pity. They held certainty. "Won't hurt," she assured him. Reluctantly, Elliot tilted his head, his breath shallow. Her small, confident fingers gently slipped inside his ear. He flinched at the pressure. "Stop," he mumbled, though his own voice sounded foreign to him. "Almost," she whispered. Then, with a sudden movement, she pulled her hand away. Between her fingers was a small, dark, twitching object. A husk, brittle but still alive. Elliot's body jerked, his chest tightening as the world around him seemed to collapse. Then a sound, sharp, clear. A honk. A car outside the gate. Elliot slapped his hands over his ears, eyes wide with disbelief. What was that? His voice was a raspy whisper, barely escaping his throat. Sophie's breath caught. He had spoken. She grabbed his shoulders, shaking with excitement. "You heard it. You heard it." Elliot's lips quivered, tears streaming down his face. For years he had lived in silence, a world without sound. And now one noise hit him like a tidal wave. Before either could process it, a voice rang out across the courtyard. "What's going on here?" It was Damien. Anger and disbelief twisted his features as he stormed toward them, phone still in hand. He saw Sophie's fingers near Elliot's ear. What happens next? Can Damien accept the truth? Stay tuned to find out. The boy's breath hitched, his words slurred as if fighting for air. Stay away from him. Damien yelled, his grip tightening around Adam's arm as he yanked him back. Where's security? No. Adam cried out, his voice hoarse and broken, sending shock through the both of them. Damien froze, staring in disbelief at his son's lips moving, producing sound. Rough, imperfect but unmistakably real. Clara stood firm, her eyes unflinching, staring up at the towering figure of the millionaire. There's something blocking his ear, she said calmly, and it's been there for years. Damien's face turned crimson with fury. You lying little? His words faltered, shaking with both anger and something far more terrifying, fear. His son had spoken. His son had heard something no amount of doctors, technology, or wealth had ever provided. Adam, clutching his ear, whispered again, Dad. The sound hit Damien like a freight train. He staggered back, color draining from his face. His boy had never spoken to him like that, never with his voice. Not in 10 years. Clara gently held up the small blackened mass in her palm. This, she said softly, was stealing his voice. Not his brain, not his soul, just this. And you never bothered to look. The water from the fountain glinted behind them, reflecting the sunlight like sharp shards. Onlookers had gathered, their eyes wide. The great Damien Cross, master of $1 billion empire, stood speechless before a barefoot woman who had done what his money never could. Adam's eyes filled with tears as he shakily reached out for Clara. I heard, he murmured, his voice raw but alive. And in that instant, the impossible was no longer a dream. Damien's world tilted between shock and disbelief. What happens next? How will Damien handle the truth? Stay tuned to find out. 10 minutes later, Damien sat in the back of his sleek black car. Adam huddled beside him, trembling. Clara sat across from them, her hands stained with the dried remnants of blood from earlier. As the car screeched to a halt at the hospital, the doors swung open. Emergency! Damien barked. Nurses scrambled, swiftly ushering them inside, and within moments, a team of doctors surrounded his son. Beeping machines and flashing screens filled the air, their jargon flying over Damien's head. His son's voice cracked, barely audible. Don't leave me. Damien froze. His throat constricted. I'm here, Adam. I won't leave. Time dragged on. Hours passed. Finally, the chief specialist entered, his smile tight, rehearsed. Mr. Cross, remarkable progress. Your son's scans show that the blockage has been removed from the ear canal. Temporary recovery is possible. Damien slammed his palms onto the table. Temporary? You're telling me a random girl did what you couldn't in 8 years? The doctor shifted uncomfortably. We followed standard procedures. Standard? Damien's voice grew louder. You charged me a fortune for treatments, therapies, machines, and you said he'd never hear again. The doctor's discomfort deepened. Sir, some conditions are unpredictable. Clara spoke sharply from the side. You didn't even try. You saw his father's name in the checkbook, but you didn't see the boy. Damien's gaze snapped toward her, anger flaring. Don't speak to me like that. She didn't flinch. Look at him, she said, pointing to Adam, who sat clutching the hospital blanket, mesmerized by every sound, the ticking clock, the hum of the lights, his own breath. The doctor sighed deeply. Mr. Cross, if you could just calm down, I'll show you something. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were reports from past specialists confirming neurological loss. Damien's heart raced as he read the last page. A memo. Cross account approved for long-term therapy extension. Maintain diagnosis to preserve funding. Damien's blood ran cold. He looked up, his voice trembling with fury. You kept him sick. The doctor hesitated. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, Damien growled. What happens when the truth about the system is exposed? Stay tuned. He tore the paper in two, his voice cracking. You turned my son into a business deal. Security rushed in at the noise, but he waved them off. Get out, everyone. With a trembling hand, he sat down next to Adam. "I'm sorry, kid. I let them deceive me." Adam reached out, his small hand resting on his father's sleeve. "It's not your fault." Damien shook his head forcefully. "Yes, it is. I trusted people who only saw numbers, not you." Clara leaned against the doorway, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but there was fire in them. "Now you know what it feels like when money makes people blind," she said quietly. He turned to her, defeated. "You're just a kid. Why do you speak like you've lived through a lifetime?" She shrugged. "On the streets, you hear the things no one wants to hear." Later, under the harsh lights outside the hospital, Damien's suit was rumpled, and his hands trembled. "They'll pay for this," he muttered. Clara crossed her arms. "Money won't buy justice, Mr. Cross. You have to earn it." Damien glanced down at her bare feet. "Why did you help my son?" "Because no one helped my brother," she replied, her voice quiet but firm. "He went deaf from an infection. The clinic didn't care because we couldn't pay. How will Damien deal with the consequences of his actions? Stay tuned to find out." Damien's heart raced as the weight of reality crashed over him. It wasn't guilt that paralyzed him, it was the crushing burden of accountability. "Then help me fix this," he said, his voice raw. "Not with money, but with honesty." Clara nodded slowly. "Start by hearing him." Damien turned to Adam, who was gazing at the city lights, absorbing the world around him with a kind of wonder. "Hey," Damien whispered, his voice shaky. "What do you hear?" A faint smile tugged at Adam's lips. "Everything." Damien sank to his knees, pulling his son close. "Then silence will never be your world again." "Not while I'm still here," Clara said quietly, stepping into the shadows of the night. Damien watched her disappear, realizing that for all his wealth, it was a barefoot woman who had given his son something he could never buy: sound. His fists clenched as he looked at the hospital sign above him. "They sold you silence," he muttered. "I'll make them pay." For the first time, his words carried not just power, but something deeper: humanity. Should Damien fight the system that took his son's voice, or is it time for redemption? Drop your thoughts below. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories that change the way you see the world.